Royal Guard forces DOWN Camilla's son, after he pins Princess Charlotte against the wall. The grand gates gleamed in the sunlight, and tourists from all over the world had gathered outside, hoping for a glimpse of the royal family. Inside, the palace was alive with activity, as servants, aides, and guards moved quickly through the long corridors. Every detail, from the polished floors to the intricate tapestries on the walls, spoke of elegance, wealth, and careful planning. Despite the serene beauty of the palace, there was an undercurrent of tension that often went unnoticed by visitors. Life inside was not always calm. Even among royals, emotions ran high, and situations could escalate quickly if not managed carefully. On this particular day, the royal family was preparing for a small, private gathering. The atmosphere was expected to be cheerful, with children playing and adults discussing plans for upcoming events. Among those present was Camilla's son, a young boy known for his lively personality. Unlike his older relatives, he was energetic, curious, and sometimes a little mischievous. While his charm could be endearing, his spirited behavior occasionally created tension, especially when he did not fully understand the impact of his actions. Princess Charlotte, on the other hand, was calm, composed, and intelligent beyond her years. She loved exploring the palace halls and observing the hustle and bustle of life around her. She had a strong sense of fairness and a keen awareness of personal boundaries. Her playful nature meant she enjoyed games and laughter, but she could also assert herself when she felt uncomfortable. The gathering began peacefully. The children played near the hallway, their laughter echoing softly against the marble floors. Charlotte was examining a decorative piece of art, fascinated by the delicate brushstrokes and colors. She moved carefully, not wanting to disturb anything fragile. Nearby, Camilla's son was racing up and down the corridor, his energy almost unstoppable. He skipped, ran, and occasionally bumped into walls or furniture. The palace staff kept a watchful eye, but it was difficult to contain the child's boundless enthusiasm. At first, their interaction seemed innocent. Camilla's son approached Charlotte with a playful grin, trying to involve her in a game. "Come on, Charlotte, let's race," he shouted, his voice full of excitement. Charlotte shook her head politely, explaining that she was busy looking at the painting. She did not want to join in the race, but her refusal did not stop him. He stepped closer, insisting, thinking that she might eventually give in. The tension started to build. Charlotte took a step back, trying to create space between herself and her cousin. She was careful not to be rude, but she needed to protect her own space. Camilla's son, however, did not notice her discomfort. In his mind, it was all part of fun, and he did not intend to scare or hurt her. Still, the way he moved, his hands brushing against her accidentally, and his insistence on playing created a moment of unease. Suddenly, in a moment of miscalculation, he lost his balance while trying to step closer. Instead of simply brushing past her, he pinned Charlotte against the wall. It happened quickly, and Charlotte was caught off guard. Her back pressed against the cool marble wall, and her hands instinctively went up to protect herself. She felt a rush of fear, not because he wanted to hurt her, but because the situation was sudden and overwhelming. The hallway, which moments ago had been filled with laughter, now held a brief silence as the children froze, realizing that something had gone wrong. Nearby staff members immediately noticed the incident. They rushed forward with a mix of concern and urgency. Royal aides and personal assistants were trained to respond to emergencies swiftly, and they knew that even small incidents could escalate if not handled carefully. "Stay calm," one aide whispered to Charlotte, gently guiding her away from the wall. At the same time, other staff members moved toward Camilla's son, trying to make him understand that his actions had consequences. The young boy protested, confused and a little frightened himself. He had not meant to hurt Charlotte, and he did not fully understand the seriousness of the situation. "I didn't do anything wrong," he exclaimed, struggling slightly as the staff tried to calm him down. His voice was loud enough to echo in the hallway, and for a moment the tension in the palace seemed almost tangible. Charlotte, meanwhile, tried to compose herself. She took deep breaths, feeling her heart racing. The wall behind her, once a comforting part of the palace's architecture, now felt restrictive and cold. She looked up at the staff members, grateful for their presence and their guidance. Their calm, professional demeanor helped her regain a sense of security. The palace guards quickly arrived at the scene. These men and women were trained for situations like this, where young royals' safety might be at risk. They moved with precision, their presence commanding attention without creating panic. They assessed the situation in seconds, understanding that they needed to act quickly but carefully. The guards approached Camilla's son gently, speaking in calm, firm tones. "It's okay, but you need to step back now," one said, guiding him away from Charlotte. The young boy resisted at first, not out of defiance, but because he was still caught up in the moment. He was energetic and impulsive, and it took a few moments for him to understand that he had actually frightened Charlotte. The palace aides remained close by, offering explanations and reassurance, helping him process what had happened. Meanwhile, Charlotte recovered her composure. She stood slightly away from her cousin, her breathing returning to normal. She was shaken, but not harmed. The staff praised her for staying calm and for handling herself well under pressure. They knew that incidents like this, while minor in the grand scheme, could be learning moments for the children involved. As the situation settled, the palace resumed its usual rhythm. The guards stayed nearby, vigilant but calm. Camilla's son, now understanding that his actions had caused concern, began to feel remorse. He looked at Charlotte with a mix of apology and uncertainty. The aides spoke to him gently, explaining the importance of personal boundaries and the need to be aware of others' feelings. The moment, while brief, was significant. It highlighted how even within a royal family, where luxury and privilege are abundant, human emotions and misunderstandings still occur. It showed that children, no matter how young, need guidance and gentle correction to learn how to navigate social situations. The palace, often seen as a place of perfection and poise, also had moments of real-life challenges that required patience, care, and understanding. By the end of the incident, both children had learned something valuable. Charlotte realized that even playful relatives could unintentionally cross boundaries, and she understood the importance of communicating her feelings clearly. Camilla's son learned that fun and excitement must be balanced with awareness of others' comfort and safety. The staff, always vigilant, reflected on how quickly situations could escalate and how important it was to remain calm and professional at all times. The palace halls returned to their normal, bustling state. Laughter and conversation resumed, and the royal family continued with their day. The incident, while minor in the larger context of palace life, left a lasting impression on everyone involved. It became a quiet reminder that safety, respect, and understanding are essential, even within a family that lives in one of the most secure and well-managed households in the world. The morning had started calmly, but the incident between Camilla's son and Princess Charlotte had created an invisible tension in the palace. Though the children had returned to their activities, the atmosphere was slightly different now. The palace staff could sense that something had shifted, even if no one openly discussed it. Royal life, while luxurious and structured, did not protect anyone from emotions like fear, frustration, or embarrassment. Camilla's son, despite understanding that he had frightened Charlotte, could not fully contain his energy. He had always been lively, curious, and a little impulsive, and this incident had only made him more restless. He wandered through the corridors, sometimes glancing back at Charlotte, unsure of how she felt. His steps echoed through the polished floors, a reminder of his presence and the unspoken tension that lingered in the air. Princess Charlotte, meanwhile, was thoughtful. She had experienced minor mishaps before, but the suddenness of being pinned against the wall had shaken her. Even though she knew she was safe, her heart still beat a little faster whenever her cousin came near. She understood that children could be unpredictable, and while she wanted to be kind and forgiving, she also wanted to assert her boundaries. Her parents, observing from a distance, were aware that this moment could teach her an important lesson about expressing her feelings clearly and standing up for herself when necessary. As the day went on, the palace staff worked hard to keep the children occupied and to prevent any further incidents. The aides arranged activities that would allow the children to release their energy safely. Camilla's son was encouraged to play games in the garden, run around under supervision, and engage in activities that helped him channel his energy positively. Charlotte, who preferred calmer activities, was guided toward reading, painting, or exploring small corners of the palace with a responsible adult nearby. Despite these efforts, small moments of tension continued to appear. Camilla's son would occasionally approach Charlotte, trying to engage her in playful teasing or games, unaware of how his actions might affect her. Each time, Charlotte would step back politely, reminding him that she did not want to play at that moment. The staff had to intervene gently, ensuring that both children understood the importance of personal space and respect. The palace guards, always vigilant, remained nearby throughout the day. They were trained to notice even minor signs of conflict or discomfort, and to step in before things could escalate. Their presence was calming, not intimidating, as they moved quietly through the hallways, observing interactions without drawing attention. They were prepared to act if needed, but their priority was always to allow the children to learn and understand the consequences of their actions naturally. Camilla's son, feeling slightly misunderstood, sometimes reacted with frustration. He did not want to upset Charlotte, but he also did not fully understand why she kept rejecting his invitations to play. His movements became more cautious, yet he still struggled with impulse control. Staff members spoke to him calmly, explaining that fun was important but must be balanced with awareness of others' feelings. They encouraged him to apologize sincerely to Charlotte, helping him understand empathy and responsibility. Meanwhile, Charlotte processed the events in her own way. She observed her cousin carefully, noting his expressions, gestures, and tone of voice. She realized that he did not intend to hurt her, which made her feel slightly more forgiving. At the same time, she remained cautious, knowing that she needed to protect herself from being overwhelmed or frightened again. Her parents quietly guided her, praising her ability to remain composed while also teaching her that it was okay to express discomfort and ask for help when necessary. By mid-afternoon, the palace had settled into a rhythm of supervised play, learning activities, and quiet moments. Camilla's son began to reflect on his behavior, slowly understanding the impact of his actions. He noticed that when he rushed toward Charlotte without thinking, it caused her fear. When he slowed down, spoke gently, and gave her space, she responded with calmness and cooperation. This realization, though small, was a crucial step in his growth and understanding of social boundaries. Princess Charlotte, too, learned important lessons that day. She realized that even when people did not mean harm, their actions could still be unsettling or frightening. She discovered that setting limits and expressing feelings clearly was a way to protect herself while maintaining kindness. Her parents reinforced this lesson, showing her that it was possible to be both firm and compassionate. The staff continued to observe every interaction carefully. They noticed moments of progress and moments of tension, understanding that these were natural parts of childhood development. They intervened when necessary, not with punishment, but with guidance. They explained to Camilla's son that apologies and understanding were part of growing up, and that taking responsibility for one's actions was a sign of maturity. They reminded Charlotte that expressing boundaries was equally important, and that she could do so without fear of causing offense. As the evening approached, a quiet moment allowed both children to reflect further. They sat in the palace garden, the soft glow of the sunset casting long shadows across the grass. Camilla's son, feeling a mix of guilt and curiosity, looked at Charlotte and asked in a tentative voice if she was okay. Charlotte, sensing sincerity, nodded and smiled slightly. This small exchange marked a turning point. Both children began to understand that communication, respect, and patience were keys to avoiding conflict and building trust. Throughout the day, palace staff documented the events discreetly, understanding that even small incidents could provide insights into the children's behavior, emotional development, and social skills. These observations were not meant to punish, but to guide, ensuring that both Camilla's son and Charlotte learned valuable life lessons while remaining safe and supported. By the end of the day, the initial tension had eased. Camilla's son was calmer, more aware of his actions, and more willing to listen to guidance. Princess Charlotte had regained her sense of security and confidence, feeling empowered by her ability to assert herself and communicate clearly. The palace, once tense and charged with uncertainty, returned to its natural rhythm of order, beauty, and quiet learning. Though the incident was minor in the grand scope of royal life, its significance was not lost on anyone. It demonstrated that even in a household filled with privilege and structure, children still face challenges, misunderstandings, and the need for guidance. It showed the importance of patience, empathy, and careful observation in helping young minds navigate complex social interactions. By nightfall, both children were tucked safely in their rooms, reflecting on the day's lessons in their own ways. Camilla's son thought about how his actions affected others and how he could act differently next time. Princess Charlotte thought about how she could protect herself while remaining kind and understanding. The palace staff, guards, and parents alike felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that a potentially tense situation had been handled with care, calm, and professionalism. The events of that day would be remembered quietly within the walls of the palace. It was a moment of learning, growth, and emotional development for both children. It was a reminder that even in a world of elegance, tradition, and protocol, human emotions and interactions required careful attention, understanding, and empathy. By the time the lights dimmed and the palace fell into a gentle silence, a sense of calm and reflection settled over everyone. The children had grown in small but meaningful ways, learning lessons that would stay with them for years to come. And while the day had started with tension and uncertainty, it ended with understanding, patience, and the quiet knowledge that mistakes, when handled with care, could become important steps toward growth and maturity. The following morning, the palace atmosphere felt unusually tense. Though the previous day's incident had been managed carefully, it lingered in the minds of everyone involved. The children, especially Camilla's son and Princess Charlotte, were aware of each other's presence in a way that made simple interactions more cautious than usual. The palace, normally alive with laughter and play, now seemed to hold a quiet energy, as if it too was waiting for something to unfold. Camilla's son, still brimming with energy but now carrying the weight of yesterday's events, found it difficult to sit still. His curiosity and impulsiveness remained as strong as ever, but he was beginning to sense that his actions had real consequences. Every glance from the palace staff, every word from an aide, seemed to remind him that he had to be careful. This awareness created a mix of excitement and anxiety within him. He wanted to play and explore, yet he also felt a strange sense of restraint, unsure of how far he could go without causing alarm. Princess Charlotte, on her part, had regained much of her usual composure. Yet the memory of being pinned against the wall was fresh. She had felt fear, surprise, and helplessness, even if only for a few seconds. That feeling had left a lasting impression on her, one that made her more alert and cautious around her cousin. She understood that he did not mean harm, but she also knew she had to protect herself if needed. Her young mind was processing the lessons of boundaries, respect, and communication with a seriousness unusual for someone her age. As the day progressed, the palace staff tried to maintain a balance between supervision and allowing the children freedom. Camilla's son was guided to play outdoors, encouraged to expend energy in games and activities that were safe and structured. He ran across the garden, climbed on soft play equipment, and engaged in supervised races. The aides reminded him frequently about being careful around others, about using gentle hands, and about listening when someone said no. At first, he resisted the reminders, thinking them unnecessary, but gradually he began to understand their importance. Meanwhile, Princess Charlotte spent her time in calmer activities. She explored a smaller part of the palace garden, observed birds and flowers, and engaged in drawing and coloring under the watchful eye of a palace aide. She was learning that it was possible to enjoy her own space without feeling isolated or frightened. Each time her cousin came near, she practiced clear communication, expressing her comfort or discomfort politely but firmly. These moments were small exercises in courage and self-assertion, shaping her understanding of social interaction in a controlled environment. Despite these precautions, tension was never far away. Camilla's son, in a sudden burst of energy, approached Charlotte in a playful but slightly reckless manner. He attempted to grab her hand to invite her into a game, forgetting for a moment the lessons he had been taught. Charlotte instinctively stepped back, raising her voice slightly in surprise. The staff immediately noticed the potential for escalation and moved closer, their calm presence a stabilizing force in the situation. The palace guards, always attentive, watched closely from a distance. They were trained for situations where young royals' safety could be at risk, and they understood that intervention required a careful balance of firmness and gentleness. When it became clear that Camilla's son might unintentionally frighten Charlotte again, two guards moved in calmly and confidently. Their approach was slow and non-threatening, intended to guide the young prince without creating panic. Camilla's son resisted at first, confused and frustrated. He did not intend to scare his cousin, yet he could not fully control the energy within him. "I'm not hurting her," he exclaimed, struggling slightly as the guard spoke in calm, firm tones. Their experience and professionalism allowed them to manage his resistance without raising their voices or using force. Slowly, they guided him down to the ground in a controlled manner, ensuring both children were safe. Princess Charlotte, though initially startled, was reassured by the presence of the guards and aides. She had learned to trust the adults around her, knowing they would act quickly and fairly. Her breathing returned to normal, and she felt the first wave of relief wash over her. The young prince, meanwhile, began to realize the seriousness of his actions. He understood that even playful gestures could have consequences, and that respect for others' personal space was essential. The incident drew the attention of other family members. They observed quietly, understanding that intervention had been necessary, but also recognizing the importance of letting the children learn from the experience. Camilla herself spoke gently to her son, helping him understand that boundaries were not limitations on fun, but protections for everyone involved. She explained that Charlotte's feelings mattered, and that respecting them was a sign of care and maturity. As the day continued, the children were given moments to reflect on the incident. Camilla's son, still full of energy but now more aware, sat quietly under a tree, thinking about what had happened. He began to grasp the connection between his actions and their effects on others. The staff guided him gently, encouraging him to apologize to Charlotte in his own words. This moment of reflection and responsibility was a key turning point in his understanding of empathy and self-control. Princess Charlotte, seated nearby, watched him carefully. She understood that he was trying to make amends, and she appreciated his effort. The aides supervising her encouraged her to accept the apology while maintaining her boundaries. This exchange, simple yet profound, allowed both children to learn valuable lessons in communication, forgiveness, and understanding. Throughout the afternoon, the palace continued its daily routine, but a sense of heightened awareness remained. The staff observed interactions closely, ready to step in if necessary, but allowing the children to navigate their relationship under supervision. Camilla's son began to show signs of improved self-regulation. He played more carefully, spoke more politely, and paused to consider Charlotte's reactions before acting. Charlotte, in turn, practiced expressing her needs clearly and assertively, gaining confidence in her ability to manage challenging situations. By evening, both children had experienced a full day of learning and growth. Camilla's son had begun to internalize the importance of boundaries, empathy, and responsibility. Princess Charlotte had strengthened her understanding of self-protection, communication, and emotional resilience. The palace staff, guards, and parents felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the day's events, while challenging, had resulted in meaningful development for both children. The incident of the day, though brief, left a lasting impression. It highlighted that even in a household of luxury and privilege, children face real challenges and must learn to navigate complex social dynamics. It demonstrated the importance of patience, careful guidance, and gentle intervention in fostering growth, understanding, and emotional intelligence. As night fell, the palace grew quiet, and the children were escorted to their rooms. Camilla's son reflected on the events, feeling a mixture of embarrassment, understanding, and determination to do better. Princess Charlotte thought about how she had handled herself and how communication and boundaries had protected her. The palace, once tense and charged with uncertainty, now rested in calm, with both children having grown a little wiser and more aware. The events of this day would remain quietly in the memories of all involved. They were a lesson in human behavior, empathy, and respect. Even within the grandeur and tradition of the royal household, real-life experiences provided opportunities for learning, growth, and emotional development. By addressing challenges carefully and calmly, the palace staff and family ensured that both children could navigate their emotions safely and maturely. Ultimately, the incident was a turning point. Camilla's son began to understand that his actions had consequences, and that playfulness required awareness and care. Princess Charlotte learned that standing firm, expressing herself, and trusting the adults around her were powerful tools for maintaining safety and respect. And the palace, with its timeless walls and carefully trained staff, demonstrated once again that even in the most structured and privileged environments, life's lessons often come through small, human experiences. By the time the lights dimmed and silence filled the grand halls, a sense of resolution and quiet growth had settled over the palace. Both children, though young, had experienced a meaningful journey of understanding, reflection, and learning, a journey that would shape their behavior, relationships, and character in the days to come. The morning after the tense events, the palace was quieter than usual. The previous day's incident had left a subtle but important mark on everyone: the children, the staff, and even the royal family. There was an unspoken understanding that the events were a learning moment, a reminder that energy, curiosity, and playfulness needed to be balanced with caution, empathy, and respect. The palace, with its long corridors, elegant halls, and grand rooms, seemed to absorb the quiet reflection that filled the air. Camilla's son, still full of energy but now more thoughtful, moved through the halls carefully. He had spent the night reflecting on what had happened, trying to understand why Charlotte had been frightened. He realized that while he had not intended to hurt her, his actions had consequences. His parents, aware of his reflection, encouraged him to express his feelings honestly. They guided him to apologize to Charlotte sincerely, helping him learn that taking responsibility for one's actions is a sign of maturity, not weakness. Princess Charlotte, meanwhile, had spent some time quietly reflecting as well. She thought about how she had felt when she was pinned against the wall, the sudden fear, the surprise, and the helplessness. But she also thought about the way the palace staff and guards had intervened calmly, ensuring her safety. She understood that people sometimes make mistakes without meaning to, and that forgiveness could be part of learning. Her parents had praised her for standing firm and expressing her feelings, reinforcing her confidence in managing difficult situations. As the day progressed, the children were allowed to spend more time together under careful supervision. The palace staff arranged activities that encouraged cooperation, teamwork, and gentle play. Camilla's son approached Charlotte with a tentative smile, remembering the lessons he had learned. He offered a simple apology, his voice sincere and quiet. "I'm sorry for yesterday," he said, looking into her eyes. "I didn't mean to scare you." Charlotte considered his words carefully. She recognized the sincerity in his voice and the effort he had made to understand her feelings. She nodded and smiled gently. "It's okay," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. This simple exchange marked a turning point in their relationship. Both children began to understand that communication, empathy, and patience were essential in maintaining trust and respect. The palace staff observed this moment with satisfaction. Their guidance had worked, and the children were learning important lessons in social interaction and emotional intelligence. The aides encouraged activities that reinforced these lessons. The children played cooperative games in the garden, built small structures together, and even engaged in simple problem-solving tasks. Each activity was carefully chosen to help them practice listening, sharing, and understanding each other's boundaries. Camilla's son, now more aware of his actions, approached play with thoughtfulness. He paused before rushing, checked with Charlotte before initiating games, and practiced gentle interactions. Each positive interaction reinforced his understanding of empathy and responsibility. Charlotte, in turn, practiced patience, assertiveness, and forgiveness. The combination of guidance, reflection, and practice allowed both children to grow in ways that were meaningful and lasting. Throughout the day, the royal family reflected on the incident and its lessons. Camilla spoke to her son about the importance of understanding others, feelings, and respecting boundaries. She explained that his energy and curiosity were valuable traits, but they needed to be balanced with awareness and consideration. Charlotte's parents praised her for her courage and communication skills, emphasizing that standing up for oneself was an important part of growing up. These discussions reinforced the learning that had already begun through action and reflection. The palace guards continued to provide quiet supervision, ready to intervene if necessary, but allowing the children freedom within safe limits. Their presence was reassuring to both the children and the staff. It reminded everyone that safety could coexist with growth and learning. The children gradually began to interact more naturally, their previous tension replaced by cautious curiosity and mutual understanding. By afternoon, the palace had settled into a rhythm of calm activity. Camilla's son and Charlotte played together under supervision, learning to negotiate turns, share attention, and respect each other's choices. They laughed together, discovering the joy of playful interaction that was safe, respectful, and mutually enjoyable. Each smile, each shared activity reinforced the lessons of empathy, patience, and self-control. The staff used these moments to guide the children subtly. They praised positive behavior, gently corrected impulsive actions, and encouraged reflection on feelings. This combination of encouragement and guidance allowed the children to internalize the lessons without feeling restricted or scolded. Over time, the small actions of consideration, patience, and communication became habits, shaping the children's behavior in lasting ways. As the sun began to set, the palace garden was filled with a warm, golden light. Camilla's son and Charlotte sat side by side, watching the shadows grow long across the grass. There was a sense of peace and understanding between them. The earlier fear and tension had transformed into connection and trust. They had experienced a small but meaningful journey together, one that had tested their patience, resilience, and understanding of each other. The royal family gathered in the evening to reflect on the day. They discussed the importance of guidance, observation, and teaching through experience. They recognized that incidents like this, while challenging, provided opportunities for growth that no amount of rules or structure alone could offer. Both children had learned lessons that were practical, emotional, and deeply important for their development. Camilla's son felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had recognized his mistakes, taken responsibility, and learned to interact thoughtfully. Princess Charlotte felt empowered, having navigated a challenging situation while maintaining her composure and self-respect. Both children had grown in understanding, empathy, and maturity. The palace staff, ever diligent, took note of these developments. They understood that the real work of learning often came in small moments, moments of reflection, guided practice, and gentle intervention. They were proud of the children's progress and committed to supporting their growth in future interactions. As night fell, the palace grew quiet. The children were escorted to their rooms, where they had a chance to rest and reflect privately. Camilla's son thought about the lessons of empathy, patience, and responsibility. He realized that his actions affected others, and that understanding those effects was part of growing up. Charlotte thought about her own strength, courage, and ability to communicate clearly. She understood that her voice mattered and that expressing boundaries could coexist with kindness and forgiveness. The events of these days, though brief, had a lasting impact. They had demonstrated that even in a privileged and structured environment like a royal palace, real-life lessons were essential for emotional growth. They had shown that empathy, communication, and patience were not just abstract concepts, but practical skills that could be practiced, learned, and strengthened through experience. By the end of the day, a sense of calm and harmony had returned to the palace. The children had not only resolved their earlier conflict, but had built a stronger foundation of trust and understanding. They had learned to navigate challenges together, balancing energy and curiosity with awareness and respect. The palace, with its timeless walls, gleaming floors, and attentive staff, had provided the safe environment necessary for this growth to occur. The story of these events would remain quietly within the palace, a reminder of the importance of guidance, reflection, and gentle intervention. It was a testament to the fact that even young children, when given proper support, could learn empathy, responsibility, and self-control. It was also a reminder that safety, care, and understanding were essential components of nurturing growth, no matter how privileged or protected the environment might be. As the final lights were dimmed and silence settled over the grand halls, a quiet sense of accomplishment and peace filled the palace. Both Camilla's son and Princess Charlotte had grown through the experience, gaining lessons that would shape their character, behavior, and interactions in the years to come. The day had begun with tension, fear, and uncertainty, but it ended with understanding, reflection, and meaningful growth. A perfect example of how challenges, when met with care and patience, could transform into lessons for life.